The night my own sister tried to erase me from existence didn't start in a hospital bed. It started in my parents' living room. I had just handed them proof that years of sleepless nights and battlefield trials had finally paid off. A federal contract worth millions. My life's work. But before I could even finish my sentence, Celeste lifted her wineglass and claimed it as hers. My mother beamed at her. My father never looked up from his paper, and I stood there, folder trembling in my hand, realizing the truth I had spent 35 years trying to deny. In this family, I was never more than a shadow. My name is Leora Ravensdale, and this is how my sister tried to pull the plug while I was in a coma, until a general walked into the courtroom. The ink on the federal contract was barely dry when I turned my car toward Charleston. My chest light for the first time in years. After endless nights coding in field tents, testing prototypes in combat zones, and fighting through red tape, the project was finally real. AI triage and surgical support for battlefield medics. A breakthrough I had given everything for. The folder holding that contract sat in the passenger seat, its yellow edge catching the glow of the dashboard. I drove home, rehearsing how I'd tell them, picturing my mother's proud smile, my father's approving nod. For once, I wanted to believe they would see me. Inside the old Ravensdale house, the air smelled faintly of oak polish and red wine. I hadn't even finished pulling the papers free when Celeste stepped forward, heels sharp against the hardwood, her wine glass tilted just so. She didn't even look at the folder, just smiled thinly and said, "Tough job, little sister. Lucky I lined you up with the right people, right place, right time." My father didn't lift his eyes from the newspaper. My mother reached to rest a hand on Celeste's arm and said with a proud laugh, "My daughter always knows how to make the right connections." Not a single glance toward me. Not a word about the years I'd spent building what now sat between us. The folder shook in my hands. The weight of silence pressed harder than the deployments ever had. I had carried lives on stretchers. I had patched soldiers under mortar fire. But nothing cut deeper than realizing my own family could erase me with a shrug. I swallowed hard, closed the folder, and turned toward the door without another word. Outside, the Charleston night clung damp against my skin, the air heavy with rain. For the first time in 35 years, the truth struck sharp and clean. In this family, I wasn't a daughter, or even a sister. I was a shadow. The road stretched ahead in an endless ribbon of black. The yellow glow of highway lamps cutting through the edges of the pines. My mind was still circling around the silence in that living room, replaying the sound of my mother's praise for Celeste and the scrape of my father's newspaper instead of his voice. That silence followed me out onto the asphalt, heavy enough that I almost missed the way the headlights in my rearview mirror refused to fade. At first, I thought it was just another late driver pushing too fast through the night, but every time I shifted lanes, the truck shifted with me. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, pulse hammering in my throat. Then it came, sudden and merciless, the slam of steel into my side. The SUV lurched, tires screaming, glass exploding. I caught a flash of the yellow folder flying off the passenger seat, lit in a cruel spotlight by the truck's high beams. The world spun out of control, and then everything went black. When awareness crept back, it was to the sharp beep of a heart monitor cutting through the stillness. White ceiling tiles blurred above me. Pain surged through every limb like fire beneath the skin. My throat scorched, lips cracked. I tried to lift my hand, my head, anything, but it was like moving under the weight of concrete. I was trapped inside my body, my will clawing against the silence. This was no accident. I knew it in my bones even before the machines told me I'd been unconscious for days. Someone wanted me off the road. Someone wanted me gone. Time dissolved into the hiss of oxygen and the steady beep of machines. I drifted between shadows until one day a voice broke through, soft, urgent, familiar. "Doctor." Hannah Cho leaned close, her words like a knife in the dark. "Celeste has already filed the order to withdraw life support. Your mother signed as witness. Your father, he didn't object." The monitor betrayed me. heart rate spiking as if my body wanted to scream while my lips stayed frozen. Hannah's eyes darted to the door, then back to me. "Don't let them know you're awake. I'll buy you time. But they're preparing to end this." From then on, I kept my eyes heavy, my breathing even, playing the part of the patient they thought was lost. But I listened. Every footstep in the hallway, every clipped whisper at my bedside. One night, a nurse I didn't know muttered. Her sister said, "Keep her comfortable, but don't prolong it." My blood turned cold, my rage hotter than the pain in my bones. Then Hannah returned with more. My accounts had been frozen by court order. I'd been declared medically incapacitated, and Celeste was now my legal guardian. I lay there in silence, staring at the ceiling, feeling the enormity of it pressed down. My sister wasn't just stealing my work. She and my mother were erasing me, piece by piece, planning to bury me alive under paperwork and signatures. I understood then. My fight was no longer for recognition. It was for survival. Flat on my back, tethered to machines. I thought I had already lost everything, until the television mounted high on the wall lit up with a live press conference. There she was, Celeste, standing tall in a navy suit, her expression practiced to perfection. The screens behind her rolled through sleek graphics, digital simulations of battlefield surgery, animated visuals I knew by heart because I had built them line by line, module by module. My name was gone. My work had been gutted of me. She leaned into the microphone, her voice dripping with calculated sincerity. "Project Sentinel is the embodiment of sacrifice and vision. It is the Ravensdale family's legacy." My fingers curled into the sheets, nails biting fabric, as my throat locked. Every word felt like dirt shoveled onto a grave, my grave. Reporters clapped, investors nodded, hungry for the future she promised. And there I was, alive but erased, watching my sister bury me in real time. The rage burned cold, sharper than pain. When the cameras cut away, Hannah slipped in, her eyes quick on the door before meeting mine. From the pocket of her scrubs, she palmed a recorder no bigger than a matchbox and tucked it beneath my pillow. She bent close, whispering so soft it barely stirred the air. "Every word spoken near you from now on. We'll capture it. Let them talk. Let them damn themselves." For the first time since the crash, I felt something that almost resembled hope. Late one afternoon, the door clicked open quietly, and Hannah ushered in a stranger through the staff entrance. He was tall, steady, with the calm eyes of a man who had seen both battlefields and courtrooms. "Colonel," he greeted me, voice low but respectful. "My name's Ethan Vance. I served before I studied law. I'm here to help you reclaim what's yours." Minutes later, another figure entered, and the air shifted. General Roland Pierce, broad-shouldered, silver hair cropped tight, his presence commanding even in silence. I remembered Kandahar, remembered his chest bleeding out under my hands, remembered the AI prototype guiding my every move until his pulse steadied. His eyes met mine now, fierce and unflinching. The three of them spread papers across the rolling tray table, forged power of attorney documents, bank accounts frozen under Celeste's name, metadata showing unauthorized logins from her law office into my military email. The pile of betrayals grew higher with every page. Ethan's tone was grim as he explained. "The court already recognized her guardianship. Right now, she holds the legal right to decide if you live or die." My stomach knotted, but before despair could take root, Pierce slid a sealed folder toward me, his hand pressed firm on top of it, voice cutting through the sterile air. "You saved me once with this technology. You kept me breathing when no one thought I'd make it out. And I swear to you now, I will not let them bury you for it, not while I still draw breath." The twist of fate was clear. My own blood was trying to silence me, but the men I'd fought beside were gathering to make sure I'd be heard. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. General Pierce moved fast, pressing the court until a temporary order came down like a lifeline. For 72 hours, the hospital was forbidden to honor any withdrawal of life support. 72 hours, nothing more, nothing less. The clock began ticking the moment the ruling hit the file. Hannah swept into my room that evening, pushing aside the clutter, setting a whiteboard against the wall, slipping resistance bands and a pair of crutches onto the chair. "We don't waste time," she whispered. Every step I tried sent knives of pain through my muscles, but with each breath, I forced my body upright. Sweat stung my eyes as I gripped the crutches, dragging myself forward, one brutal inch at a time. Pain meant I was still here. Pain meant I could fight. Meanwhile, Ethan uncovered the most damning proof yet: metadata buried in the hospital system. My original chart listed neurological response present. Celeste had altered it to persistent vegetative state. That forged line was the foundation for their request to pull the plug. As if fate wanted to seal it, the recorder hidden beneath my pillow captured Celeste's own voice in a hushed phone call. "Once she's gone, the contract's mine." Hearing it later, I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. Every second I stayed silent, every labored breath, was no longer weakness. It was strategy. My silence was the snare, and they were already walking into it. The next morning, the door creaked open, and I caught the scent of my mother's perfume before I heard her voice. She stepped in with Celeste beside her, heels clicking against the linoleum. I kept my eyes closed, chest rising steady, the perfect illusion of oblivion. "Just a few more days," my mother whispered, low and certain, as if she were soothing herself. In the corner stood my father, Douglas Ravensdale, the man who once barked orders over rifle drills in our backyard. He didn't move, didn't speak. He knew. He had to know. His silence cut sharper than any blade, the kind of silence that condones, that enables. I wanted to rip the mask off, to rise up and spit fire at them both. But I stayed still, heart pounding beneath the steady rhythm of the monitor. The recorder would remember what I could not yet reveal. That night, when the halls finally quieted, I tapped the bed rail until Hannah slipped in. She pressed a pen and a clipboard into my trembling hands. My grip was weak, my strokes uneven, ink smearing across the page, but I managed to carve out my name and sign the authorization that placed Ethan as my legal representative. The lines were crooked, but the meaning was straight as steel. I was not incapacitated. Celeste's grip over me had fractured. She no longer held absolute power over my life. Part 5, Chapter 8. The crutch strikes in the courtroom. The courtroom was already humming when I arrived, a low tide of voices carried by the press rows and the restless shuffle of attorneys. Celeste stood at the podium, navy suit crisp, her hair pulled back in a severe twist. She looked every inch the polished professional, her voice ringing clear as she told the judge and the cameras that she had acted out of duty, family loyalty, and national interest. She even smiled as she gestured to the screens behind her, painting herself as the guardian of innovation. Flashbulbs popped, capturing her every angle. She waved to the crowd like she had already won. Then the double doors opened. The sound alone hushed the room. My crutch struck the marble floor in a deliberate rhythm, sharp, echoing, unmissable. Step by step, I crossed the threshold, the weight of the uniform pressed against my shoulders, every ribbon and medal gleaming under the courtroom lights. Pain seared my leg, but I carried it like a banner. Conversations died mid-sentence. The cameras swung. Celeste turned and froze, her confident mask cracking into wide-eyed disbelief. For the first time, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I stopped in front of the bench, drew in a breath that scraped my throat raw, and lifted my chin. My voice came out ragged but strong enough to cut through the silence. I never gave up on life, but my own family tried to bury me alive. The words hung in the air like a charge before a storm. The reporters forgot to write. The judge leaned forward, and the gallery shifted as if the ground itself had tilted. In an instant, what had looked like a clean victory for Celeste turned into something else entirely. A reckoning. The trial was no longer hers to control. It was mine. The air in the courtroom was taut as a wire. The judge adjusted his glasses, waiting, while Ethan stepped forward with a quiet confidence that silenced even the rustle of papers. He clicked the projector, and the first slide filled the screen. My medical record. The original entry noting neurological response present. Then, with another click, the altered version appeared, now reading persistent vegetative state. The timestamp told the story better than words. The edit had been made from a login at Celeste's law office. Gasps rippled across the gallery. Ethan didn't pause. His voice cut like a scalpel. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. My client's prognosis was falsified to justify the termination of life support. Then he turned to Hannah. She rose, steady in her scrubs, and told the court what she had seen, that my eyes had opened, that I had responded days before any withdrawal request was filed. Her testimony was calm, clinical, and devastating. Finally, Ethan pressed a button, and the courtroom filled with a voice that seemed to drain the air from every chest. Celeste's voice, cold and certain. Once she's gone, the contract's mine. The recording played twice, the silence after it even heavier than the sound itself. Reporters froze mid-keystroke. The judge's gavel hovered above the bench, but didn't strike. I turned my eyes toward Celeste. She sat rigid, her hands clenched into fists, her face bloodless. My father lowered his head, his jaw tight, but words locked away as always. My mother's sobs broke the silence, her voice trembling. I didn't know. I didn't understand. But I didn't look at her. My gaze stayed fixed on Celeste, the sister who had tried to erase me. Ethan's closing words landed like hammer blows. This is not just fraud. This is attempted theft of intellectual property, unlawful guardianship, and an attempt to terminate a living, responsive patient for personal gain. The judge's eyes narrowed, his voice firm. Celeste Ravensdale, you will answer to criminal charges. The room erupted. Reporters surged to their feet, cameras flashing, already composing headlines. I caught a phrase whispered again and again. A colonel betrayed by her own family. The story was out now, no longer confined to my hospital room or my nightmares. It belonged to the nation. In that storm of noise, I sat still, my crutch against the table, my spine straight. For once, the silence I carried wasn't erasure, it was strength. Celeste had wanted me invisible. Instead, every eye in the country was on her, and the truth had finally spoken louder than her lies. The judgment had been delivered, and with it, the weight of years of betrayal finally shifted off my shoulders. Celeste was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, her license to practice law stripped away. My mother, once so quick to sign her name on a death warrant for me, lost all guardianship rights and faced civil penalties. My father, who had built his identity on discipline and honor, was left disgraced. His silence was recorded not as stoicism, but as cowardice. His medals no longer carried pride, only the stain of what he chose not to prevent. When the noise of reporters faded and the headlines scattered across the nation, I returned to the one place that had always grounded me, the base. Weeks later, I stood under the bright lights of the dedication ceremony. The project that had nearly been stolen from me, nearly buried with me, now stood unveiled under its rightful name, Project Liberty. My name etched into it for the world to see. General Pierce stood at my side, his salute sharp and unwavering. I straightened as much as the crutches would allow, lifted my chin, and returned the gesture. Flashbulbs went off, but they no longer felt like an invasion. They were simply background noise to the calm I carried inside. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to disperse, a young soldier hesitated before approaching me. Her voice trembled with quiet conviction. Your story kept me from giving up. I stayed because of you. Those words landed with more power than any verdict or sentence ever could. I smiled, not with triumph, but with a sense of recognition and peace. I had survived more than a crash. I had survived the silence of my father, the betrayal of my mother, and the calculated cruelty of my sister. I had survived being erased, and now, no signature, no courtroom scheme, no family betrayal could ever strip my name from the legacy I had fought to build. The greatest victory wasn't Celeste's prison sentence. It wasn't restitution or the disgrace my parents now carried. The greatest victory was this: reclaiming my life, my voice, and my right to be remembered as I truly was. My name, Leora Ravensdale, was no longer a shadow. It was carved into history, undeniable and permanent,